This episode is brought to you by Vuori. Give the active people in your life something they'll truly appreciate. Performance apparel from Vuori. Whether they're into running, surfing, hiking, or even just casual walks around the block, there's something for everyone. And if you're not sure what to gift them, you can't go wrong with something from Vuori's Dream Knit collection. It's the perfect gift and so comfortable. Get 20% off your first purchase today at Vuori. VUORI.com/Spotify.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party and the vice chair of the state Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We're happy you're back with us today. So, Jesse, let me tell you, as somebody who's paid very strong, serious attention to what's going on with respect to the aid bills for the Ukraine, for Israel, and for the border, I think what we just saw was an absolute disaster. On top of that, there's a disaster of the failure of the Republican-led House of Representatives to impeach Secretary Mayorkas of the Homeland Security Department. Let me tell you the problem with the whole, as far as I'm concerned, and I want to get your thoughts, Jesse. You need to give Ukraine aid because you need to put Putin in his place and not reward aggression. And if Putin is rewarded with aggression, then the Baltic states, as well as Poland and other NATO countries, are at risk. He has to be deterred. Now, what a deal will look like, I don't know, but I do know that any time you appease and you give into appeasement, you only encourage adventurism and more violence and more war. That's the lesson of history. That's the lesson of our times. So that's on the Ukraine. They need to fund Ukraine. With respect to Israel, Israel, as you and I have talked about, Jesse, is the first bastion of protecting Western civilization, the whole Judeo-Christian ethic that has built civilization. There's a sweep, is Islamic fundamentalism, led by terrorists who want to destroy Western civilization, who want to have a jihad against Western civilization, who want to impose their religion, their culture, their values on everybody else. And the door was opened up in Europe because of Merkel, who's the Chancellor of Germany, and the European Union let all these people in, and now you have destabilized countries in Europe. In the Middle East, if you don't stop Hamas and wipe them off the face of the earth, then they'll come back at Israel. They've already said they're going to do that. The corporate chart says so. And they've made it very, very clear in statements that they will keep coming back and come back and coming back. And the fight there, Jesse, is about Iran. It's really about Iran and the failure of the Biden administration policy on Iran. And our border. Not last but least, Jesse, not last but least. This is not complicated stuff. And we can go into detail after I get your initial comments, but let me tell you the problem with the border deal that was packaged with all three together. All of them are important. It was a gambit by the Biden administration and Chuck Schumer, the majority leader of the Senate, to put them all together, push them all through. Each one of them deserves separate consideration on its own merits. Speaker Johnson had it exactly right, Jesse. And the fact of the matter is, we do not need legislation to have the border protected. Let me say that again, ladies and gentlemen of this audience. It is a falsehood. It is a fraud. It is utter nonsense that the president needs legislation. He already has the power under the United States Constitution, under federal immigration law and other statutes to close down the border. Trump, whether you like the guy or you don't like the guy, had it right. He closed down the border. He had very little slippage coming through. You had cooperation with Mexico. You weren't letting people in with a free pass. When you let them in with a free pass, they're here forever. And then what they do is they hook in their families as well. You're depopulating and repopulating communities. You put everybody under threat. Biden could do it. He's using this as an excuse. It's all about campaigning. He wants to say the Republicans and Trump are not protecting the border. Mr. President, you're the one who's failed to protect the border. Your turn, Jesse.
You're absolutely right. And let me just say that I completely agree with you and with House Speaker Johnson. The Senate deal is dead on arrival. It does not help the border. This is a political gambit played by the president, the Biden administration. I'm very surprised and disheartened that Senate Republicans fell in for this. Because first and foremost, as you pointed out, Joe Biden inherited a secure border. It became open to fentanyl, sex trafficking, human trafficking, the cartels now controlling it. As a result of the executive orders he instituted or he removed from the Trump administration. You want to secure the borders? Tomorrow, reinstitute the Trump era executive orders as it comes to the southern border, and they'll be secure immediately. And you're right. And I've said this from the first point of Jump Street. We need to support Ukraine. We need to support our friends in the Middle East, Israel. They are fighting wars we don't want to fight. We don't want our blood to be shed there. But those should be straight up and down votes on this by the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives. Stop playing politics with the democracies of Ukraine, global diplomacy, and also the lives of our U.S. armed forces as we go forward. But as we go forward on this, the Senate deal that put all this together, Ukraine aid, the Israel aid, and basically codifying the illegal invasion of the United States. What I would say to the Biden administration, and this is every common sense American, every New Yorker, especially every New Yorker that witnessed the attack of 2 brave New York City police officers in Times Square by 4 migrants earlier this week, and that they were left, they spent hours in jail and then released. We'll get into that later. Instead of the Biden administration fighting Texas, the Biden administration should fight the cartels, fight against human trafficking and fentanyl. They should use their executive orders and put the border back together. This is something that they want to take off the political table, and it takes a lot of bravery on the role of House Republicans and the Speaker and those Senate Republicans that said no to this deal, because what you would be doing is not securing the border, maybe not even getting the aid that we needed. So you'd be hurting Ukraine, you'd be hurting Israel, and you'd be hurting our efforts here on the southern border if this deal went through. And you know what? Elon Musk, when he started off, and he was the darling of the progressive left because of his electric vehicles. He purchased Twitter now, which is X. He opened up the platform for free speech and stopped placing his thumb on conservative voices and making sure that all voices were heard. He may not be wrong. This is maybe a plan by the Biden administration and the Democrats nationally to just leave the border, let millions of people, 7-8 million people cross the border, give them status immediately, let them vote, so you have a one-party state here. It sounds a little bit foolish, only because maybe Elon Musk says it, but it sounds like that's what their plan is.
Well, that's very interesting, because when Tucker Carlson, for the first time when I heard this theory, which is now described as the replacement theory, which is that you're replacing our citizens, our law-abiding citizens who came here legally through legal immigration and became citizens through a naturalization process, and who waited online like our forebears did. I thought, well, that sounds a little delusional. It sounds a little conspiratorial, a little paranoid. But the fact of the matter is, when you have the ability by executive order to close down the border because you are given the statutory and the constitutional authority to do so, and Trump showed it could be done, when you don't do it and you're allowed to keep going on and on and on and on, then it tells you something about their mindset. Now, let me say something about this bill, which I took a look at. Number one, as I stated at the beginning, you don't need legislation. They have the power. But number two, what you're doing, if you adopted that bill, and this is why you're absolutely correct, Jesse, about the Republicans in the Senate being schnookered, you are ratifying the illegal acts of the Biden administration. When you start talking about having, you'll start enforcing at 5,000 or 3,000. No, you start enforcing at illegal immigrant number one. Number two, what you don't do, as this bill did, is you give absolute discretion to the president and his Homeland Secretary to waive any of the limitations. And it only lasts for a limited period of time. So the whole thing, frankly, was a fraud. And the Republican senators, in good faith, who tried to work out a deal, were being taken for a ride by this White House and by Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader. It's a travesty to say that you needed this legislation. Mr. President, close the border. You're violating your oath of office to protect and defend this country. Other topic, Jesse.
Wait, just one more thing.
Sure.
If I was the House Republicans and the House Senate, in the Senate Republicans, I would offer this deal. Biden administration reinstitute the Trump-era executive orders that secured this border. Reinstitute them. If you reinstitute them on Monday morning, on Tuesday you will have an up and down vote on Ukrainian aid and aid for Israel. Plain and simple.
I agree. You know, it's very, very funny about this, if it wasn't so sad. We're talking about the future of Western civilization here.
Yes, we do.
And what we're seeing is playing out parochial politics of the worst kind. Speaker Johnson had it absolutely correct. And he's the one, by the way, he gave the cover and the political courage to the Senate Republicans to repudiate the proposal. Because he's the one who said it's dead on arrival in the House. So Speaker Johnson is entitled to a lot of credit on that. Seal the border, protect the border, do what has to be done. By the way, in terms of money, Jesse, shockingly, only a fraction of the tens of billions of dollars allocated in this bill were going to go to secure the border. Most of it was going to go to Ukraine, and some of it was going to go to Israel. The vast amount was Ukraine. Now, I'm not faulting giving money to Ukraine. I think we have to support them. I don't know that they can win a war against Russia. I don't know that Putin's ever going to be removed because of this war. But I do know you can't encourage his kind of adventurism, and you have to help. And the isolationists in both parties, in the extreme left and the extreme right, are wrong. When you appease, you encourage. When you encourage, you get more of the same. And Biden's policy has done nothing but failed in his leadership to do that. With respect to Israel, just today, as you and I are sitting here, Jesse, chatting about Israel, we have the following problem. Hamas comes out with a proposal, Jesse.
Yes.
And you know what the proposal is? They will have an exchange of hostages by 3 different stages for a 145-day full ceasefire, and an abandonment by the military of the IDF in Gaza immediately. Excuse me? So let me get this straight. When the charter says we want to destroy you, when all their action says they want to destroy you, when their spokespeople say, well, this is just the beginning and not the end, this will be ongoing until it's from the river to the sea, which means extermination of all the Israeli people as well as the whole state of Israel. When they tell you that, take them at their word. This is serious business. This is not a joke. And if Israel loses, you have the balance of power shifting. And who does it favor? Iran. And what does Iran shout in the streets of Tehran? Death to Israel and death to America. So if they don't make it clear enough, let me say it again. They'll not be satisfied with the death of Israel. Israel is the first bastion. It's the first step in going after Western civilization, America and Western Europe.
You can see, I can almost see the progressives now. There is no way Israel or any democracy could accept that deal. What happened the last time that Israel trusted Hamas and the Palestinians? When they were attacked on October 7th on a ratio higher than that of 9/11 that we lost, a terrorist attack. Then when they occupied that area, they found a tunnel network. They found that their bunkers are built under schools and hospitals. They basically used their time not to make the lives better of their people. What they did was fortify their terrorist operation. And there is no way that 135-day ceasefire and Israel removing itself from the Gaza can take place. Release those hostages. Then we start talking once again. Release the Israeli hostages. Release those remaining American hostages as well.
Well, you just pointed something out that's very important. Where was Biden saying from day one, you have killed Americans in this terrorist attack? You are guilty of war crimes in doing this. Give us all the hostages back, and we demand immediately that you give back the Americans. He's never said it, not day one, and not 4 months later into this. It's a total failure of leadership by this president. Speaking of failure of leadership, I'm very concerned as they roll towards nuclear weaponry, that is Iran. Who's going to stop them from getting nuclear weaponry? This administration, they're brainless, they're gutless, they're not doing the right thing. They keep saying we'll never have this. That's the idiocy of Barack Obama, of John Kerry, and of President Biden. Iran wants nuclear weapons so it can change the balance of power, intimidate all of Middle East, control the seaways of international commerce, and then pose a threat to Western civilization, first Europe, then us. This is serious business. We have to stop them from getting nuclear weapons.
Absolutely. And I don't believe that the United States under the Biden administration is going to be able to stop them or has the fortitude to stop them. There was a full-throated support for Israel in the days after October 7th by the Biden administration. And we credited him because that was right. Systematically, he has retreated from that position of support. His top spokesperson on diplomatic matters, his Secretary of State, has now chastised Israel for the way they've conducted themselves and now almost giving them terms on how to protect themselves in a time of war. That's wrong. When you're friends, you stand shoulder to shoulder with your friends, you back your friends up. That's what we should be doing, but we can't. But, Judge, are you surprised? Over the course of the last 2 years, over the last year, Iran proxies have been taking pot shots at American U.S. soldiers, about 100 of those attacks. Just about 10 days ago, 3 of our bravest, best servicemen and women were killed by a drone, by Iran proxies. And what has been done? I give him credit. I give the president credit for receiving the bodies of those fallen soldiers. And he declared that he decided on action. He's been quiet since then. And I will tell you, action is not defined by sending a Tomahawk missile into empty warehouses.
Agreed. And by the way, it took them 5 days or 6 days before they responded. And they said from the very beginning, we're not looking to enlarge this war. We're not looking to escalate. If you want to have a balance of power, a balance of deterrence, you do not tell an enemy what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. Let them be afraid for a change. They control the momentum of what's going on because we've already told them we're not going to escalate. Isn't that idiocy? If I'm in a street fight, Jesse, do I tell my adversary, well, you can punch me in my face, broke my nose, but I'm not going to break your nose back? Really? And I'm going to win that fight? It is asinine. Look, the fact of the matter is America and Israel have to take the fight directly to Iran. If Iran is deterred, then all these proxies will fall in line. Why? They may not want to, but who's supplying the weapons, the money, the training, the equipment?
And where did money come from? From the Obama-Iran deal.
All right, we have to take a break, Jesse. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay tuned. We'll be back with you in a moment.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
Hey guys, have you heard of Goldbelly? It's this amazing site where they ship the most iconic, famous foods from restaurants across the country, anywhere, nationwide. I've never found a more perfect gift than food. Goldbelly ships Chicago deep dish pizza, New York bagels, Maine lobster rolls, and even Ina Garden's famous cakes. So, if you're looking for a gift for the food lover in your life, head to goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT. That's goldbelly.com, promo code GIFT.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
Today's episode is sponsored by NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast. Life comes with big money questions. Is it better to max out your 401k or put more in a brokerage account? Does buying a home make financial sense in today's market? Should you use extra cash to pay off debt or invest? NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast has the answers. Their finance journalists break down investing and budgeting strategies to help you build wealth and navigate major financial decisions. Make smarter money moves. Follow NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast wherever you listen.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
We're back on Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. So, Jesse, there's this problem, and I tell you this is the former general counsel of the New York City Council, that you don't bring something to the floor of a legislative body unless you know you have the votes to get it through. And I'm talking about the failure of the Republicans in the House with the loss of 3 of their votes and all the Democrats voting against it to impeach Mayorkas. Now, let me tell you why I think Mayorkas should have been impeached. Number one, he lied to Congress time and time again that the border was secure. And the Biden administration now is admitting, and of course that's the justification for the legislation they say they need, that the border is in crisis and it's not a secure border. So he lied consistently throughout the whole process. Number two, he failed to cooperate with the investigation by Congress, and he failed to enforce the laws by giving these free passes to these illegal migrants who came in, and then he paroled them. Federal law makes it very, very clear you have no right to let them enter the country at all. You hold them outside the country. This is a very big deal. That's at Mayorkas and Biden's hands. And I am telling you, you don't want to impeach the President of the United States? You certainly send a message by impeaching Mayorkas. And the Republicans failed to do that. I think that shows weakness. I say you don't do it. And because the Republicans are showing, Jesse, and they did this with the fight against Speaker McCarthy, that they can't govern the legislative house. And the Democrats, like lemmings, all vote the same way. They all go over the cliff for Pelosi and now Hakeem Jeffries. They go over the cliff. The Republicans, well, we kind of like it. We don't like it. We'll go along with it. We won't go along with it. They embarrass their speaker. They embarrass the Republican Party. And they undermine good legislative policy. Now, people say to me, well, it was a waste of time to even try to impeach Mayorkas. It's not a waste of time when you can have cameras going, a narrative unfolding, the truth coming out about what this administration has done to fail to abide by the law of the United States and have sold out this country to foreign nationals who have no right to be here and undermine the security of this country. Just as the Democrats used January 6th to spin out their narrative, the Republicans had an opportunity to have full hearings on impeachment against him. They voted to impeach both out of the Homeland Security Committee with Chairman Green, the Rules Committee. They should have gone to the floor for a vote for discussion and debate. And even if you'd never get 2/3 of the Senate, which I know you would never get, at least you could get public attention on this failure. What say you?
We were talking off air. As a leader and as a chairman, the first order of business is to know how to count. And I do agree with you. You do not bring a vote unless you know that you have the votes in your hand. And with a slim majority, I'm very surprised by this. And it is embarrassing. This action, which demonstrates that we don't know how to count and we can't run a procedural process in the House, It comes on the heels of a protracted replacement for Speaker McCarthy. It just does not. It's not a good optic for the Republicans. That does not mean the issue and the topic at hand is not serious and needs to be done. As Speaker Johnson said, that these are very difficult times, and extreme measures sometimes need to be taken in extreme times. We've spoken about this. In fact, I think I've spoke about it, and I was convinced by our good friend Eric Levine and yourself. I first said that we should go after Mayorkas and impeach Mayorkas. The better route would have been the Attorney General Garland, in my estimation, as it was convinced by you two fine esteemed gentlemen. But that's the way we should have gone. I believe that the Republicans used the procedure because they were missing a number of votes, including Majority Leader Scalise, who is undergoing
cancer
some type of treatment.
Cancer, right. Yeah.
And we're going to be able to bring this vote up again on 2 articles of impeachment because there's no doubt that he has mismanaged the administration of the Department of Homeland Security, and in doing so, knowingly, willingly, and lying to Congress. You cannot come to Congress 10, 15, 20 times under oath, and a portion of those appearances, say the border is secure when there are literally millions of people, illegal aliens, members of the cartel, drugs, fentanyl, human trafficking, crossing our borders, which makes every community, every neighborhood, a border town. He should be impeached. They need to bring this back up, get their act straight. No one likes to see the way laws are made or sausages are made. What they want is the result. The one thing about us and Republicans, victories and flaws, we're transparent. You're going to see everything.
Well, talk about seeing everything. Let me tell you what I see, and it makes my eyes bleed and my head explode. And that is a constitutional crisis created by the Biden administration because Governor Abbott and the great state of Texas is protecting our borders, enforcing the immigration laws, putting up barbed wire, putting up barriers, doing what they have to do to protect the good citizens of Texas. Because remember, it's not just Texas, Jesse. Once they get into Texas, they move throughout the country. Yep. And so what does Biden do? He has his Justice Department sue to remove the barriers, goes to court to say that the Justice Department and the FBI and the DEA and every other alphabet agency you can think of, Border Patrol, they can go out there and remove the barbed wire. Okay? Now, they haven't done anything yet to remove the barbed wire. And to his credit, Governor Abbott is putting up more barbed wire. Okay? And as they remove it, he should keep doing it until he's enjoined by a court. Now, why is this a constitutional crisis? Because the Constitution of the United States, Jesse, is very clear. The obligation of the federal government is to protect this country and its states against invasion. It specifically says that the states have a right of protection from the federal government against invasion. And this government under the Biden administration has failed in that obligation. So what is the state of Texas supposed to do? Sit idly by while the citizens are raped and murdered and drunk drivers run down their children and their lands are invaded and people are mugged on a constant basis and the streets become third world meccas for filth and disease, and say it's okay because you have supremacy clause, federal preemption? This is a constitutional crisis of Biden's making. It is totally unnecessary. It shouldn't happen. Abbott is to be commended. I've met Governor Abbott. I've said to him that he's doing the right thing. I don't know what else a governor can do, but he should be praised, not damned. The Justice Department should be enforcing the immigration laws, not going after a sovereign state which has a right to protect itself. What say you?
It's funny because the Biden administration calls this a political stunt. The placement of wiring along the border. Governor Abbott is absolutely right in his ability, need, requirement to protect the citizens of the Senate of Texas, the people who elected him to the highest office in that state. The person playing politics here is the members of the Biden administration and the president himself. As we discussed in the first segment, he can secure the border without legislation by immediately, through executive order, reinstating the Trump-era policies that secured this border. Instead, what do we have? We have the President of the United States fighting a sovereign state when he should be fighting, and I'm going to reiterate this from the earlier segment, when he should be fighting the cartels, he should be fighting human trafficking, he should be fighting the transportation of fentanyl and other drugs into our communities that are killing our kids and breaking families apart. The Biden administration's inaction or costly actions by the removal of those Trump-era policies on the border, on the southern border, have made every street corner, every neighborhood in the United States a border town. And we are feeling the effects. All we need to do is just see what's going on here in New York City. What's going on here? A sanctuary city, proud to be a sanctuary city. They did this when it was popular, when so they can appease the base of the party, the progressive base of the party, and the AOCs of the world, and squad in the House of Representatives. So they avoided primaries. What are we dealing with? Now the governor says we're going to take monies away from school aid, from communities like suburbia, Nassau County, Suffolk County. And instead, we're going to put $2.4 billion into the placement of migrants. And now they're going to be getting
$53 million
in cash cards. Unbelievable.
So, Jesse, if you're a little short, you and I can go to Mexico, walk through the border, get our free money, pay off our current card debts for a couple of months, and do it again and again and again.
Absolutely.
It sounds like a great economic plan to me. I mean, why? What right do they have?
Somebody else is paying for it.
Of course, we are as taxpayers. Every taxpayer. By what right do they spend our money in that reckless way? It's absolute foolishness. And let me talk to you about what's going on in the streets of New York. What's going on in the streets of New York as we speak, Jesse. As we speak, there are fights going on between gangs for territorial control. Just like the cartels are killing each other and fighting in the streets of Mexico, they're doing it here. And that's what the Times Square fight was all about, Jesse. It was one Venezuelan gang versus another gang from Latin America about controlling certain areas of Times Square. And what do they want to control? The sale of drugs, the pickpocketing, the shoplifting. They're not there. Prostitution. Whatever they can get away with, they will get away with unless it's stopped. So you're putting in gang violence. It's gang violence not just against each other. What about the innocent bystanders? What about people who are victims of their crimes? It hasn't worked out so well for Mexico that you have these fights with the cartels. It hasn't worked out with them at all. This is a disaster. While we're talking about the border, we're very pleased indeed. Chairman Jesse Garcia and I are very pleased to welcome to our show, Let the Record Show, the Republican conservative candidate for Congress in the 3rd District out in Nassau and Queens, Mazi Philippe. Mazi, I want to say I'm so happy to have you on the show. We're so lucky to have somebody of your character and your ability and your experience running for Congress. You're exactly the kind of person we should have in Congress. You are an immigrant yourself. You believe in the sanctity of borders and the integrity of this country. And what is the big issue for you, Mazi, as a great legislator, being a member of the Nassau County Legislature, now running for Congress? What is the big issue that you say people are voting on next Tuesday and in their remote balloting now?
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your show call. The biggest issue right now is really the border crisis. Things are out of control because of Joe Biden, Thomas Suozzi, my opponent, that he was in a majority when he decided to open the borders. It is a national crisis that they put us in this mess, and we need to fix it as soon as possible. Well,
it seems to me, and by the way, just so we're clear, Let the Record Show, Chairman Garcia is the House Republican. I'm the House Democrat. I'm still a member of the Democratic Party, but I'm an American first. I believe in the integrity of our borders. I believe in protecting this country. We're under siege both domestically and by foreign enemies. We see it worldwide. This country will not survive unless we get the borders under control. Now, I've met Tom Suozzi. And in fact, a number of years ago, he was on the show as a guest. Nice man, but If he goes back to Congress, you know he will vote the way Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader of the House, wants him to vote. All these Democrats, my party, have gone over the cliff like lemmings supporting the left-wing progressives. So it seems to me, Mazi, the value of your candidacy is that you'll get a common-sense elected official protecting and defending our borders. A vote for you, seems to me, is a vote for common-sense national security. A vote for Suozzi is voting for a nice guy who used to be in Congress, but will vote with the Democrats who we know will not secure our border. What say you?
I agree 100%. You know, I came to this country about 17 years ago. This country has been so kind to me, and my husband, who was born in Ukraine, came to this country as well. And we are living the American dream. We both came in a legal way. And this country is so dear to us. We cannot see when the left progressive policy makers taking our country to the wrong direction, and we have to stop it. It's all this nonsense and taking our country, and I'm asking myself, who is going to benefit? Why you are doing this? You have been elected by the American people. You're supposed to secure the American interest, and the border security is a big one. You failed. Thomas Suozzi and President Biden absolutely lead us to the national crisis that we don't have control over our borders. Million migrants, unvetted migrants, making their ways. We don't know if they're criminals. We don't know if they're terrorists. We know for sure the amount of drugs coming from the borders, killing our children, our family members here in our country. We have to stop it. We need to common sense government. They are taking us in the wrong direction. We need to stop it. We need common sense government. This is exactly what I'm bringing to the table, because for me, the American people comes first.
Oh, very well said, and I agree with everything you said, Mazi. Chairman Garcia.
Mazi, it's a pleasure to have you. And, you know, just full disclosure, it was fantastic to come out and support you because you truly are the American story, you and your husband and your family. And for those of you who don't know, Mazi also served in the Israeli Defense Force. So she knows the importance of our borders. She knows the importance of national security, as well as an extended and spectacular record in the Nassau County Legislature. And you know what, Mazi, you're absolutely right. As we've seen, your opponent, Tom Suozzi, is nothing more than a professional politician that has always looked not for the benefit of the people that he represents, but the next political stepping stone. And that is the problem. He is someone who will move forward for his own political gain than he is for the people of the community he's represented and takes an oath to. Just look at it. And what should scare us when you doubt about his support of Hakeem Jeffries, support of the Biden administration, support of the Hochul administration, the support of not securing the border, all you have to do is look at his comment when he served in the House of Representatives, when he said and referred to himself as an honorary member of the squad. That's a squad of members of Congress who are progressive socialists that want to tear down America. It's comprised of AOC, Jamil Bauman, Ayanna Pressley, Rashid Tlaib, and Greg Cesar of Texas, and of course Summer Lee. Long Island and the House of Representatives does not need another member of the squad. They need a strong voice, someone who knows what the people of Nassau County, of New York, and America are fighting each and every day, and that's Mazi Philippe.
And Mazi, let me ask you a final question. Suozzi is on tape, even though he denies saying it, that he was proud when he was a Nassau County executive of not supporting and working with ICE. So in other words, local authorities cannot support ICE, will not cooperate with ICE. That means illegal migrants who are a threat to the safety of the community cannot be turned over to ICE by state authorities. What's your position on cooperating with ICE?
Of course, he kicked the ICE from Nassau County, and he was so proud of that. You know, this is, again, the same old politics, old career politicians who put career and his own party before the people, the American people and the residents. He failed. He failed as a county executive to protect our county, and he failed as a Congress members. And he has a history of funding sanctuary cities. He has a history of not supporting law enforcement. So I'm not surprised. It's very sad, you know. You would expect for a man who have been serving the people for many years, he will be loyal to the people. And This is not happening under him. The last thing we need is really, as you said, Chairman, you said it so clearly, the last thing we need to send Thomas Wazir back to D.C. And he claiming he's going to fix the border, but we know for sure he is going to be another vote for Biden, another vote for the squad members who are anti-American, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel,
Absolutely.
and we need to stop it.
Mazi, I want to thank you very, very much for being on Let the Record Show. After you're elected, hopefully, Chairman Garcia and I will bring you back and get your sense of what it's like to be a member of the House of Representatives. God bless you. Good luck in the campaign and on the election. And it's been a privilege and a pleasure having you on Let the Record Show. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Just a reminder, the special election is on Tuesday, February 13th. Polls are open from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen of the 3rd District, take back and protect your country. Vote for Muzzy.
Thank you, Mazi. Good luck.
5 immersive worlds, 1 amazing theme park. Get ready to explore the all-new Universal Epic Universe, featuring the wizarding world of Harry Potter, Ministry of Magic, Super Nintendo World, How to Train Your Dragon, Isle of Berk, and Dark Universe. Epic Universe opens May 22nd at Universal Orlando Resort. Our universe will never be the same. Tickets and packages on sale now at universalorlando.com.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Ladies, you'll end up shopping for your guy's deodorant, right? So try Degree's Original Cool Rush. You see, last year, Degree changed the formula, and men were mad. One guy even started a petition. So Degree admitted they messed up and brought the Original Cool Rush scent back. It's clean, crisp, and actually smells like someone you want to cuddle. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So toss one in your cart and find out why it's the best-selling men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory.
Clorox Scentiva smells like lavender. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
All right, that could go on for a while. Experience the long-lasting freshness of Clorox Scentiva. Available in Clorox Scentiva Lavender Scented Bleach. Use as directed.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
This is Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia. Welcome back to our show. This is our final segment, today's show. We're privileged indeed to have Jack Lester, a very distinguished attorney who I've known literally for decades. We served on a committee together for appointment of housing court judges when we were both a lot younger. Jack, welcome to Let the Record Show.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction.
Now, let me ask you this. You have started a lawsuit, and I understand correctly, you filed in the Southern District of New York attacking this congestion pricing plan. So what I want to do is I want you to talk about why did you file this lawsuit, who you're representing, what are your theories, why do you think you're going to win?
Okay, I'll try to take it one at a time. So I'm representing an organization called New Yorkers Against Congestion Pricing Tax, and that's a coalition of members representing all 5 boroughs. And we represent elected officials, citizens, small business owners, members of the minority community in the South Bronx, Lower East Side. And what is common across the board for all of these individuals suing, for all of these plaintiffs, is that the evaluation, the review process that went into passing congestion pricing failed to adhere to the environmental rules of the federal government and also the procedural rules of the state of New York. And I could go into that more specifically and particularly if you would like me to.
Well, I mean, to keep it simple so even Jesse and I can understand it, and our listeners can understand it, fundamentally, there's such a thing as a more summary proceeding to do a review, and there are some that need a full-blown environmental impact statement. Isn't that correct, as a matter of law? And so your argument is that the short form summary version was not enough given the complicated nature of what they were trying to impose. They had to do the longer one. Is that a summary of it?
Yeah. So under the National Environmental Policy Act, there's such a thing called the Environmental Impact Statement. And what the proponents of congestion pricing did at the federal and state level was they avoided doing an environmental impact statement. Now, why did they avoid doing that? They avoided doing that because they wanted to circumvent or short-circuit the process by stamping it's like a rubber stamp of approval by saying that there would be no significant negative environmental impacts. And the study that the Federal Highway Administration did proved the opposite. They did a 1,400-page environmental assessment, which demonstrated unequivocally that there would be negative environmental impacts in terms of increased air pollution, increased congestion, increased cost burdens, a whole host of negative consequences, which they chose to ignore and issue a short-form environmental assessment.
And it seems to me, when we're talking about this, that people have to understand how serious this is. On Katz and Cosby, which I'm on every night, and Jesse and I have been talking about this congestion pricing in our show for a long, long time. It seems to me, it sounds good. You want to avoid congestion in the streets of New York City, in Manhattan. The problem, looking at it objectively, is that when you don't do a full-blown assessment of what the impact is going to be, you're actually doing something on faith, or you're just spinning a narrative. You're not really dealing with the threats. I, as you know, once upon a time, was a general counsel of the city council. And I always try to do the right thing, which is the real impact on the community. So it seems to me it's not only the environmental issues, and I don't know if you raised this in the lawsuit, but also, and I'd love to have your comment, it also seems to me you have as follows. You're going to have a negative economic impact of people who are commuters. They're paying for the privilege of coming into the city, which adds to their cost of living. It's inflationary for the economy, and it's also a gift of money to the MTA, which is going to jam up the economic recovery of the city of New York because it's a disincentive for coming in. And that means theaters, that means restaurants, that means hotels, that means retail shopping. This is a serious matter, and I'm very concerned people aren't paying attention. And then if you use the boundaries, Jack, that they're talking about, the 60th Street, well, that means people will just be parking or going around it to avoid that situation. They'll just avoid those boundary lines so you can have congestion and pollution in those areas. What are your thoughts? Yeah, well, it's interesting the way you summarized, but I think we should be clear that the federal government did a bait and switch. So it's not as if they did not do an environmental assessment. They did. They did a 1,400-page assessment. The conclusions that they reached in their own assessment was that there would be significant negative environmental consequences. That was the bait. Then the switch came when, at the 11th hour, they issued what's known as an environmental assessment, finding of no significant impacts. So their own conclusions, this is important to note, their own conclusions contradicted the assessment that they themselves performed. And that's really the crux of the basis of the lawsuit, that their own analysis showed negative environmental consequences, and they, the government, chose to ignore it. Well, let me ask you.
That's the key point right there.
I think that's very well said, and I agree that is dispositive to me as a former Supreme Court judge. If that case was before me, I would certainly say, are you kidding or do you mean it?
Right.
Go back to the ground zero and start again.
Here's the point, Judge Weinberg. They keep saying, and this is very disingenuous, if I could say that, because they keep saying, look, we did an analysis. We did 1,400 pages. What more do you want? Yes, the analysis was fine. It's the conclusion. It's the conclusion that ignored the analysis.
It's almost as saying, it's almost as saying in 1,400 pages that I'm wearing a red tie today, and then when you come to the conclusion, say, and Weinberg was wearing this blue tie today. It's as simple as that, isn't it?
Yeah, and what's interesting is they keep pleading in all these cases. Look, we did an assessment. What more do you want? Well, what more than I want? What I want is an accurate, honest conclusion.
Where do you stand? Jack? Where do you stand in the lawsuit now?
So we just filed. There are a number of other cases that have been filed. The state of New Jersey filed a case. Then Fort Lee filed, and the UFT filed. So Judge Lyman, who has been assigned the case in the Southern District, has ordered a conference for this Monday morning to get all the parties together under one tent. And we're hoping that the other plaintiffs will cooperate and we could move this case forward in a consolidated, organized fashion.
Have you or any other plaintiffs in the other cases sought any kind of restraining order or injunctive relief against going forward at this point?
Not as yet, because this cannot go into effect until after the State Administrative Procedure Act review unfolds and the review board comes in with their final recommendations and the Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority and MTA board approves it. So that won't happen until sometime in March. Now, if that becomes imminent, then yes, we will seek an injunction.
Now, are you and your group looking at these administrative proceedings in the state?
Yes. So that was the fine point you brought up about the economic impacts, because the environmental review process focuses on air pollution, congestion, all of the environmental impacts. But the State Administrative Procedure Act requires that they do a review of the economic impact on small businesses, first responders, all of the categories that you've talked about, where this would, destroy businesses in Times Square, the hotel industry, the Lower East Side, Chinatown, Little Italy, will be devastated by this. And through the State Administrative Procedure Act, which is the state review, they're supposed to do an evaluation.
And my last question to you, Jack, with respect to all these other lawsuits, are you in communication with the other lawsuit plaintiffs and attorneys on this?
Yes, we've opened up lines of communication, and hopefully there'll be cooperation. But there we need some good, political ambassadorship to get all the parties under one umbrella.
Well, it seems to me, I'll tell you as a judge, I'd want all the parties together. It seems to me I may be missing something, but I don't see any adverse, as we say in the business, Jack, any adverse interest. You all want the same thing. You want a full-blown environmental impact statement to talk about the harms, and you also want to make sure that the administrative proceedings in the state process, in terms of the whole package, which includes economics, are looked at before we rush off. For my own editorial judgment, Jack, I will tell you this, and I'll get your final comment, and then we have to sign off the segment. It seems to me this is nothing more than a money grab by MTA. If they did a better job of managing, if law enforcement was supported in the efforts to get the fare beaters, they don't need this money. They're failing to manage MTA properly. They waste resources. They need to take a hard look at the pension plans, as far as I'm concerned, because they shouldn't be getting massive overtime in the last 3 years to puff up their pensions. If they need money, create new incentives by getting people to pay their fares, taking a hard look governmentally at the unions and how much they're getting. Is stop putting a tax on commuters. Stop doing something that's going to hurt the city of New York. It's wrong, and it's not going to help congestion, and it's not going to help the environment. Last word, Jack.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And I think I want to be clear that the plaintiffs that I represent are not opposed to enhancing mass transit. I think everybody agrees that that's a worthy public purpose. But I think what they've done with congestion pricing is they put the cart before the horse. So they put the burden on working class people, first responders, emergency workers, teachers to pay for something that's going to happen in the future. And meanwhile, we have an inadequate mass transit system, and they're forcing people onto that system. And the other point I want to make, which perhaps I did not make, was that the areas most severely impacted will be what's called environmental justice communities, South Bronx, Lower East Side, East Harlem. There'll be a lot of traffic diversions into those communities, already burdened with high levels of asthma, emergency needs in terms of hospital care, ambulances. Those communities will be severely hurt, and there's no proper mitigation to protect those communities. So I want to make it clear, we're not opposed to mass transit, and this is also a push for greater equity and environmental rights for the community.
Jack, I want to thank you very, very much on behalf of Chairman Garcia and myself. This has been very, very informative. People need to know what's going on. Congestion pricing will not help congestion. It will not help the environment. It is economically destructive. It's a money grab by the MTA, and if they're going to do it, they need real thought, real analysis, and an honest conclusion. I want to thank you very much. The people who you represent are very fortunate indeed to have you as their counsel. Thank you, Jack Lester.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, well, Jack. Be safe.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, Jesse, let's wrap this up. It seems to me we've had an interesting show. What have we covered? We've covered the whole world, practically.
We've covered the international topics. We've covered local topics, political topics, and congestion pricing, and an environmental assessment that was basically half-baked. They reached a conclusion and then made sure all of the facts.
No, it's worse than that, Jesse. What they did, they made findings which came to a conclusion that they would have a negative impact, but their final net conclusion in the summary says it won't.
Exactly.
So 1,400 pages showing why it was negative, and then that's what I said. That's why I made the illustration about the red tie versus blue tie.
Exactly.
All the evidence shows I was wearing a red tie, and then they conclude I was wearing a blue tie.
And you pointed it out. This is nothing more than an attack on suburban families, an attack on workers, attack on businesses. And it's using communities like Long Island and Suffolk County specifically as the ATM to bail out New York City, who've already hiked fares and haven't gone after fare beaters. And you pointed it out. The MTA is not the best run operation in the city, in the country, in the state, anywhere. It is run amok, overspending, no one's in charge, overtime's out through the roof, they have labor unrest. Until you can get your own house in order, I think it's unfair to ask people to suffer
And
more.
You're telling people they have to ride the subways.
And it's not safe.
And the buses, and it's not safe. So really?
Exactly.
Are you telling your children, am I telling my children, we telling the people of the city of New York, get on the subways, everything is fine? No. Well, so let's double back and talk about this problem we have about public safety. The problem with public safety is that there is no meaningful public safety because you have the left-wing Democrats, the progressive Democrats have fostered upon this city and this state and the suburban counties a body of law which is unworkable. It doesn't protect the good citizens. It gives a get-out-of-jail-free card to criminal defendants. It doesn't allow judges to hold people in when they're a threat to the public safety. We just saw the incident, as you correctly pointed out, in Times Square, where what happened in Times Square? Police officers were attacked by a mob, and then the judge let him out. Now, I will say, in fairness, one defendant was held in, and that defendant was indicted. That's fine. What about the other 10, 11, or 12? They fled. Some of them, as many as 4, fled out west. Some were picked up in Arizona. They were on their way to California. The purpose of bail is to ensure people come back under New York law, not public safety, or threat to the community. It's a failure in New York law brought to you by the extreme progressive Democratic Party. You should be able to hold people in if they're a threat to the community if you're a judge. But this judge, whoever he or she was, made a determination, even though these were so-called bail-eligible cases, Jesse. Bail-eligible cases, okay. That means the judge could have held these characters in, and this judge failed to do so. Now, let me give you a real-life situation. When and this goes back to Alvin Bragg's assistant DA not asking for bail. So Bragg's person doesn't ask for bail, and the judge amens it, says, okay, you didn't ask for bail. I'm letting these clowns out. Excuse me. When I sat in criminal court and Supreme Court, if I didn't like the recommendation for the assistant DA standing in the part on a bail issue, I'd say, that's your opinion. My opinion is I want to set $50,000 bail. Counsel, defense counsel, what do you say about that? So defense counsel would get very agitated, and defense counsel would say, but Judge, the DA doesn't want bail. I said, that's wonderful. When he or she sits in my spot as a judge years down the road, they can make the determination. I'm sitting here now. This is awful. This person should be held in. I think they're a threat to not return, and I'm going to hold them. I'm going to hold them in, and it's $50,000 bail. What do you have to say about that? And I would supersede the recommendation of DA.
Absolutely. I think that, Your Honor, you said it perfectly. There is no better illustration of the failure of the liberal Democrats' policies, Hochul, Albany Democrats, Washington Democrats, than what transpired on those tragic events of those two police officers that were attacked. Hours later, those perpetrators were off onto the streets, giving the middle finger to everyone, giving the bird to every innocent bystander, every lawful American. Ladies and gentlemen, the Democrats today, they stand for lawlessness.
And let me tell you this, Jesse, and this also should make anybody with common sense have eyes that are bleeding, head is exploding. Governor Andrew Cuomo is the one who issued the executive order forbidding state authorities to cooperate with immigration services of the federal government. Okay? Hochul, by the stroke of a pen, can rescind that. Let's say it again. Hochul, as the governor, can rescind it. Period. Let's end with that, Jesse. This has been Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation today and our guests, and we look forward to being with you again next week. Thank you for listening.